I'm John Batchelor. Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents, major American Jewish organizations. We're headed to the Hajj, and trouble in the Hajj and then the Golan Heights. But we must pause for the story out of the Korean Peninsula of a 5.3 magnitude earthquake. Gordon Chang of the Daily Beast joins. Gordon, what can you tell us right now about the reports in Seoul? Good evening to you.
Good evening, John and Malcolm. There was a 5.3 quake, as you mentioned. The U.S. Geological Survey said that it was artificial, and also South Korea's Yonhap News Agency, which is semi-official, also called it an explosion. So it's pretty clear that the North Koreans detonated their fifth device. And by the way, this one was about 20 to 30 kilotons, much bigger than the previous four tests. And so therefore, the North Koreans are making a lot of progress.
And this timing, Gordon, does it match up to anything, any party conference, any birthday? It's just after the G20. The ASEAN, has the ASEAN wrapped up, or are they an audience for this?
ASEAN just wrapped up. President Obama is winging his way home. This is Friday, so it's North Korea's Foundation Day. But the significance of this is that it occurs like 3 days after North Korea's nuclear envoy went to Beijing, talked to the Chinese. So I don't know what was said, but clearly North Korea would not have gone ahead with this if they thought that China would impose real costs on the North Koreans. And you got to remember that Beijing right now is much more angry at Seoul for the deployment of the THAAD missile defense system, terminal high-altitude area defense. And so basically, I think Kim Jong-un, the North Korean ruler, thought he could get away with this.
Any indication that Iranian VIPs were present, observing, participated in any fashion?
Too early to tell, but they've been on site for the first three nuclear detonations. We don't know about the one in January yet, but I'm sure the Iranians were there because they have this joint program. The North Koreans get their money from Tehran, so I'm sure that there was going to be some Iranian connection.
Gordon, and how does it correlate with the recent launches? Do you see this as part of one continuing program?
Like the SBLM launch?
Malcolm, that's a great question. And there were the three tests of the Nodong, the 620-mile tests. That was during the G20, which China held, which certainly embarrassed the Chinese. So North Korea is just testing missiles and nukes as fast as it can, and so therefore that, I would suppose, is the connection. They think no one's going to hurt them, so they're just going for full bore.
All right, the news so far, and Gordon is indicating strongly that it will be confirmed over time, is that North Korea, a rogue predator state, has tested its fifth nuclear weapon here in the morning in Asia. We go from the trouble in North Asia to the trouble in the Persian Gulf. Malcolm, I want to get to the Golan momentarily, but the Hajj, what do we know?
Well, as you know, for a couple of weeks, I have been trying to bring reports about what I see as an escalating relationship. We saw it with the visit to the MEK by Turkey, the former Saudi Arabian intelligence chief. We've seen it in other statements and measures between the two countries. And, you know, this goes to the core of the Sunni-Shiite rivalry in the Middle East, and it goes in an ancient hatreds. But the two leading countries, obviously Iran is for the Shiites and Saudi Arabia for the Sunnis. The incident last year at the Hajj, which is the annual rite where millions of Muslims come to Sunni Muslims come to Saudi Arabia and do the ritual at and the last year there was a tragedy and many people were killed, including a number of Iranians.
A stampede.
Right. So and since then the Iranians have been using this as an excuse to try and beat up on Saudi Arabia, and they've called repeatedly, including last week, for an international investigation. I think that they are trying to escalate the rhetoric that in case something happens that they have called for internationalizing control over the two holy mosques, which is Saudi Arabia's legitimate claim to religious leadership. Obviously, they will never yield on this matter. But the escalation, I think, is something that we have to prepare, study, and watch, because this effort to build up the expectation of what's going to happen, and they used language today. The supreme leader himself talked about the incompetence of the Al-Assad regime. He called the ineptitude and other language, which is really quite harsh, and talking about their management of the two holy mosques. And Riyadh has answered and talked about the Iranians. And their chief cleric said they're not Muslims today, which of course is an insult to them.
It's a 1,000-year-old dispute.
And this dispute, but it's escalating in a lot of ways. And today the Iranians accuse the Saudis, interestingly, of being responsible for the violence in Iraq and Yemen and Bahrain and many other places, and they're trying to put the onus on Saudi Arabia for the very violence that we believe that they are largely responsible for. At the same time, by the way, the chief of Iraq's Hezbollah is coming to Tehran tomorrow. So we could see in all of these things, as well as their escalation, Iran's escalation versus the United States, harassing our ships, etc., as part of a whole where they are asserting their leadership in the region, challenging Saudi Arabia, trying to rally the forces against them. And my fear is that there could be a spark, a simple spark, that could set this off in a very violent way.
30 seconds, Malcolm. Sons of the Prophet, a name that was given to me by our colleague Aaron Klein.
Right.
ISIS on the Golan. What can you tell me in 30 seconds?
What we've seen is that the Hezbollah is moving troops into the Golan in southern Syria. But I believe that the purpose is not so much to challenge Israel, but to get rid and to challenge these militia groups and military groups. They keep changing their names now, as we know. Al-Nusra changed name. Others, they're forming new coalitions, and they are going together with the Syrian army, by the way, into the southern part of Syria to challenge them in the Golan, in the Quneitra area. And those who remember the Six-Day War will remember Quneitra, and this is the passageway from Israel, from the Golan to Syria.
Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents, Major American Organizations. We'll stay with the Iranian story when we come back, because we're going to be joined by the author Jay Solomon, his new book, The Iran Wars. I'm John Batchelor.